different places. Can you give us your view as to whether or not there is a housing bubble out there?
Well, unquestionably, housing prices are up quite a bit. I think it's important to note that fundamentals are also very strong. We've got a growing economy, jobs, incomes.
Finance Greg here, and in today's video we're going to be answering the question, will the UK face another banking crisis in the coming near future? Now, the reason this video came about is because there's been recent headlines about certain banks already failing. There's the Silicon Valley Bank, and then there was Credit Suisse, which had to be bought by Deutsche Bank. And what's going to happen next, as you can see in the markets in Europe, that people are really concerned about the banking situation over in Europe and whether it could trickle just like it did in 2008. People seem to forget that during the banking crisis in 2007, 2008, 2009, it was actually a European bank. I believe it was a French bank that first collapsed, and then you had the whole situation. It spread like wildfire after that. So the current situation over in Europe is making people question whether their banks are really secure and which ones could face another collapse. So let's just get straight into it, and before I actually get into the video, I do have to mention, stay tuned for the end because I'll have a question for you, the listeners, at the end of the video, so stay tuned. So just to quickly run over what happened in the US and how the situation currently in Europe and the banking sector as a whole began, just quickly, I'll mention it, I'll run through it. So there was a bank in the US which invested heavily in mortgage-backed securities, and when those interest rates rose on those mortgages, it made the investments incredibly unsuccessful and resulted in the collapse and the failure of these mortgage-backed securities, which sounds very familiar because this is exactly what happened in 2008, and it became like a domino effect from one bank led to another because a lot of the banks are intertwined with each other. They lend to each other. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens within banks, in which one fails, then they all start to, because one borrows from the other, and then that one borrows from that other one, and then it's like a boom, 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 boom situation. Okay, so because this then led to Credit Suisse, the investment bank, also developed cracks, and they had to be bought by Deutsche Bank. And the next concern is, what happens to Deutsche Bank? Is that going to have to be bought because they've bought this? Credit Suisse has got all sorts of problems. So we are where we are now. Okay, so looking at the present day right now, we can see that all of the banking stocks are all down, and especially those in Europe. And as I already mentioned, it's because people are concerned about if their money is safe and if another bank is going to fail. So people are getting flashbacks to 2008. So simply, it's because they rely on each other, all the banks do, and there's concerns, blah, 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 blah. So, historically, if we look back in 2007, 2008, all the governments and investors on the news were universally saying that, it's contained, there are no other banks are going to fail, it's contained. Do you remember there was the whole, this is contained to subprime? I remember that very clearly. You can go online and look at these clips. I'll show you one right now. Right now, I'll show you. Here we go.
He went on to talk about the subprime market. Another fear yesterday was that there'd be contagion, but not in the eyes of Ben Bernanke.
Our assessment is that there's not much indication at this point that subprime mortgage issues have spread into the broader mortgage market, which still seems to be healthy, and the lending side of that still seems to be healthy.
Yeah. And so all of these investors and everyone on the news is trying to calm the markets, calm everyone down, say, no, it's contained, all these other banks are fine, because we've now got certain things in place that we didn't have in 2008, where, you got capital requirements and all these different elements to make banking, quote, now safer, and so they won't fail. And the central banks will do random stress tests on banks, which basically, long story short, tests how capable they are in a situation like a banking crisis, and how capable they are in having liquidity and not having liquidity issues. But there's always some excuse as to why it's now, quote, safer. But it does sound eerily familiar to the last crisis, because no one thought a bank would fail like the size of Lehman Brothers, and then of course it did. So this sounds eerily familiar, where they're trying to calm the markets and say, don't cause a panic, because what central bank or what government is going to say, you know what, we're about to face a massive crisis, it's not yet happened? No, of course they're going to deny it at every opportunity. Every opportunity they can, they're going to deny it. It makes sense. Why would they cause a panic? Because it's like when central banks, remember about 2 years ago, they were saying there won't be any inflation, and then once inflation started to pick up, they were saying, oh, it's transitory. And then, of course, once it started to pick up and it seemed prevalent, then they said, oh, you know what, this seems prevalent now. Do you know what I mean? Because if they fear that if they say, oh, it's this or it's that, then it will become worse. It's like with inflation expectations. When people see a government agency or a central bank say something, they will put that into the market and they will alter expectations. Therefore, they have to deny anything's possible until it actually occurs. That's why it's very stupid when investors listen and take everything a central banker will say seriously and believe them 100%. I mean, that's why I covered CNBC and how stupid it is to just listen to everything they say, because the anchors will listen to Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, right, the chairman, and they'll say, you know what, he makes some solid points, and because of he said this and that, let's take on his ideas and say, he's 100% right. All of his statistical and predictions looking forward, they seem reasonable, they seem correct. He says this, so it has validation. But they seem to have very short-term memory, because I feel as if these central bankers are more often than not wrong than they are right. Massively. Absolutely massively. I mean, people will just eat into it as if they're bloody fast for 28 days straight and they're starving and they just gobble it all up. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's like, well, okay, let's turn our attention to individuals, and you might be asking to yourself, well, what about my money? Is it safe? Yes. As long as you have under £85,000 in a bank, your money is guaranteed by the government. So if you're banking with HSBC, let's say, and they fail, let's say, right, your money is absolutely safe. It's 100% protected by the government. They will pay you the full amount as long as it is under £85,000 because of the FSSC scheme, which is backed by the government. And the reason they do this is not to cause a panic and have people have like a run on the bank and people withdrawing their money, because people say, oh, it's fine if this bank fails, if my bank fails, because I'll get my money back from the government. Which is this like weird psychology type thing that they've been doing, and I guess it works. I mean, it didn't really help in 2008 with banks like RBS and Northern Rock, which you see the pictures, the images, the videos of people lining up miles, it looked like, bloody hell, to withdraw their money. So, as we are towards the end of the video, my question to you, now let me know in the comment section, would the UK government step in and purchase another bank from failing? Considering the hubris of central bankers saying, oh, yes, banks are fine in the UK, they're secure, it'd be embarrassing. It'd be so embarrassing for them that they'd have to do this. Well, don't forget to subscribe. If you're someone that watches my videos and isn't subbed, then I'm going to come around to your house, take your phone off you, press subscribe, and then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go upstairs, drop my bloody guts, and not flush afterwards. How about that?